right, so you kind of had a quick crash course, a reminder course if you haven't had it before, on evolution and the term natural selection and natural selection within gender. Okay, so as you think about that, you realize that a lot of our behaviors and our preferences, for instance, actually come from the hunting and gathering times. Okay, if you look at a slice of pie, and we'll call it a time pie. So it's a pie of all of time up until now, right? And you look at all the kinds of societies that we've had since the hunting and gathering one. It's such a tiny slice of the pie that I'll tell you something, PowerPoint cannot even make it because it's too small of a measure of the pie. It can't show it, okay? So all the rest of this pie is hunting and gathering time. And it takes a long time for natural selection to do its thing. And so we are not evolved for the society we're lived in. We're actually evolved perfectly, beautifully well for hunting and gathering times. And that will change, but it's going to take a lot more time for that to happen. And for that to catch up, and then it won't catch up there, it'll catch up to this time when it's long past it. We especially, see these universal traits, this effect of hunting and gathering times is particularly strong on mating behavior, as you might expect it to be, right? And this is the specialty of David Buss in Texas, not mating behavior itself, but of course the study of it. So David Buss has come up with some really interesting evolutionary theories of universal traits involving mating behavior, and we're going to run over some of them here today. More importantly, he's come up with some really creative and fun ways of studying them. So first off, one of the things that you don't need David Buss to tell you, it's pretty darn obvious, right, is that there's a difference overall between males and females and how choosy they are about sexual partners. Now, this isn't true of all females. It certainly isn't true of all males, right? But overall, there's a really big difference if you just look at males and females overall. It is a huge difference. And in fact, researchers are not allowed to start with assumptions. In this case, it wouldn't have hurt anything to do so, but we're not allowed to, and that's really great because sometimes what we think we see, we're not really seeing. Sometimes we rely on our intuition. Our intuition is wrong. So we always have to start at the beginning. And one study that was done to show this, these studies tend to be particularly humorous because we're like, yeah, kind of already knew that. But they're really humorous. These studies are. And a particularly famous one was done at a university in Florida. And what the researchers there did was they had a very attractive male go out on campus, female go out, very attractive graduate female student go out on campus and approach men who were walking alone and simply asked, well, the study was more involved than this, but we're going to look at the last question, which is, would you like to sleep with me? Yes. This is what this poor woman had to ask, right? And the researchers were interested in the percentage of men who would say yes. And about 70% said yes. They didn't know her from Eve. All they knew about her was she was attractive and she had approached them. That's it. Now, they then sent out a very attractive male grad student to ask females the same thing. And guess what the percentage was that he scored? A big fat 0. Right? Again, not hard to imagine, a bit humorous. Hey, but, David Buss explains this using evolutionary theory, and in particular, something called differential parental investment. So again, if you look at our ancestors, why might this have been passed on in females to be very choosy compared to males? Why would this be passed on differently? Because there's very different parental investment. And again, we're evolved from that time, from hunting and gathering time. And if you think about that time, that was a very mobile society, right? Um, and had to be. They had to move around. They had to move to where they could um, pick the food, different temperatures, different environments. They had to move to where there was hunt available, and constantly moving around because of the weather and such. Okay, if you think about the minimum, very minimum investment for a female who becomes pregnant, okay, it's about 9 months of really severe limitations on her mobility. Very, very important, much more important then in that time, right? Now, if you look at the minimum, absolute minimum investment for the male in this pregnancy, it's about 1 teaspoon of sperm, right? So really big difference there, guys. Really big difference. Now, David Buss has also done some really interesting work with mate selection. Okay? And what he notes is that males tend to be seeking something different than females are. So males, far more important for males when looking for a potential life mate or mating partner are fertility cues. Who is it they're going to mate with? What are they drawn to? Remember those preferences being, part of that influence is coming way back from hunting and gathering time. So, so David Buss notices that males are more interested in fertility cues. What are fertility cues? Cues that women are in a fertile range of age, right? So if you think about it, there's certainly physical cues that a woman has reached that age, physical cues with her body, you can see. But there's also a lot of cues when a woman gets past that age. Okay, so for instance, the hair becomes less glossy, and so less of a particular color and more of gray, right? So the hair loses its gloss and loses its color over time and becomes more gray, would be an example of this. So a fertility cue would be glossy hair. A fertility cue would be hair that is clearly a certain color. And other ones, that youth is associated with fertility. So women who are in that fertile age range, younger age range than most of the years that women now live. And another example would be the hip to stomach ratio, so hip to waist ratio. Okay. And another one yet, would be beauty. So things that are considered beautiful. For instance, a clear complexion are actually signs of health. Okay. And so if someone doesn't have a clear complexion, sometimes, not always, but sometimes that is related to a health problem. So a clear complexion and other beauty kind of signs are fertility cues. David Buss also noticed that for women, resource cues are more important than they are for men. So we're not saying fertility cues aren't important for females. Sometimes they do look at things like, how attractive is this person? But resource cues are more important, generally speaking. And for males, fertility cues are more important. Resource cues being things like money. How much money does the person make? Do they have a reliable job? Are they employed? Might be power is related to the amount of resources that you get. So sometimes, usually they're related, power and money, but sometimes we can see someone who has more power than money, but they can still pull strings to get resources with that power. So things like power and money and kind of job, their access to the resources. Okay. And he said this difference again is based on differential parental investment, but now, around the idea that, men are going to have more of an emphasis on looking for a mate with fertility cues, because there's more likely they'll be more likely to pass on their genes. Now with females, okay, men don't have that limited range of time that they fertility range of time that females have. So he said instead with females, this is based on the fact that they are looking for someone who's going to stick around and help them bring up the offspring, and in particular, do their part in bringing in resources to this little family, right? So that this offspring has a better chance of making it and living to pass their genes on. All right, so we got through that, and now sexual jealousy. This is interesting too. I want you to think about this. I want you to imagine, whether you do or not, that you have a partner in life, okay, and a committed partnership in life with somebody else. And I want you to imagine that you hear a rumor that your partner has had a secret sexual relationship with somebody else, a secret physical relationship with somebody else. That's your first scenario, and you're going to pit it against a second one. The second scenario is that you hear a rumor that your partner has had a secret emotional relationship with someone else. So just a friendship, but close, emotional kind of a relationship that they've kept secret. Okay, which one of those would be most upsetting for you? Okay, think about that. What David Buss finds is that women are far more likely to be more upset by the second scenario than the first one. Okay, and men are more likely the reverse, to be more upset by the first one than the second one. Okay, now, but David Buss claims that this is based on using evolution and using the theory of universal traits and preferences is this, okay? He said, when you look at males, okay, this is based on paternity uncertainty. They are more upset, generally speaking, not all males, but generally speaking, by far most males, by the first scenario, because of paternity uncertainty. In other words, you never know 100% for sure who the father is, right? And certainly when a woman has a baby, you know who the mother is, but you don't have that absolute certainty in who the father is. So males tend to be more upset by sexual infidelity. So males tend to be more sexually jealous. And he said females, we find this difference with females, and this is based on resources being drawn out of the partnership. And that's far more likely with an emotional relationship than just a sexual one. So, for instance, oftentimes if it's just sexual, it's a prostitute, right? And I don't even know what the going rate is today, maybe $200 is being siphoned out now and then for that purpose, if it's a secret sexual relationship. But think about the emotional relationship, okay? And think about the fact that, the secret woman, we'll say, friend, hey, is somebody that this male has kept secret and cares very deeply about. Okay, if he runs into a problem making the rent, isn't he going to want to spring to her rescue? What about when Christmas comes around? What about when her birthday comes around? What about when she gets in other crises financially? Isn't he going to want to come to the rescue? So there's then the potential of many more resources being drawn secretly out of that main relationship between the main two. So different types of jealousy. And then, David Buss has done some really interesting work because he's come up with really interesting ways of studying these preferences. For instance, he did some very famous personal ad studies. Remember back in the days when these personal ads were in newspapers, there was a classified section. So now we've got dating sites on the internet, and these classified personal ads, what used to be called personal ads, have kind of gone out of date. However, he studied a lot of them while they were still readily available. And some of the things that he predicted, they found very strongly. So, if you look at a typical personal ad from back in that time, they were very short, which made them easy to study. Okay, so they were very short, nothing like these long profiles that are available now for people on dating sites, because the person placing the ad had to pay by the character, and space even counted. A space between words even counted as a character. So they would do abbreviations, and they would be very short and to the point. And usually the language would be broken up between two different things. One of them would be, usually the first sentence would be something, one sentence short, very short sentence of them describing themselves. And the second sentence describing who they were seeking. And so he predicted that when women were representing themselves, they would be more likely to do so with fertility cues than resource cues. And that the reverse was true for males. He predicted that males would be more likely to represent themselves in that one sentence, just that language of representing themselves, part of the ad, with resource cues. And then he also said that women would be more likely to consider an older date. Men would be more likely to advertise for a younger date. So there are kind of some funny things in here too, but also very true. So here's some example of a couple of ads. Notice that this first one has some abbreviations in it, WWPM. And what this stood for at the time was white, widowed, professional male. So white, widowed, professional male, early 60s, outgoing, classy, financially secured. So he's representing himself in that way. Okay. In search of an attractive, single female, 25 to 55. Wait, he's 60? 25 to 55 for romance and love. What he did was he had his people go through many male ads and many female ads and had them code them. So they were trained to code for fertility cues and for resource cues. And you'll see, for instance, in this first ad, whoops, here we go back there, that we've got, here's a resource cue, and this is actually a resource cue, and this certainly is a resource cue, right? And so we've got 3 resource cues and absolutely 0 fertility cues in how this man is representing himself. Okay, what is he looking for? Now he says attractive, so that's a fertility cue, right? And that's it. So we've got 1 fertility cue, but no resource cues. So the prediction certainly holds on that ad. And the second one, divorced white female, okay, 32, slender and easygoing, loves cooking, dining, and the beach, and beach walks, sorry. In search of single, divorced, or widowed male, okay, caring, employed, with similar interests. And if you look at just the ones, the cues in here that happen to be fertility or resource cues, you see that we have a slender here, which is a fertility cue. Okay, we have in the language describing herself, no resource cues, and we've got 1 actual fertility cue. There's another one too here with age, right? Anyway, then we get to the male or who she is seeking, and we see a very strong resource Q, but no fertility Qs. Okay. Following his predictions.